Some people really need to look at themselves in the mirror, and they really need to check themselves before they decide to blast other journalists. Now, before we say that this right here is a case of the woke eating the woke, I need to go ahead and let you know right now that this is not actually the woke eating the woke. What it is a short, fat little man who is from South Florida who, for whatever reason, decides to carry a load of talking points that don't exactly match where he came from, has proven himself to be a sellout, but yet for whatever reason, when a certain company does a certain little thing, I don't know, a little change in direction before it completely falls off the cliff. By the way, this direction I'm talking about is debate, because at one point in time it was working. I'm talking about a man who may want to look at himself in the mirror before he decides to talk.
That ain't it. Not it at all. It's just I had to come to a realization about who Dan Le Batard is.
This right here has been a bit of an obscure story. It didn't really get a whole lot of play, but yet at the same time, though, this is also a very slow news cycle, which, by the way, while I've not been on as much recently as I've wanted to, you guys know the deal about Tuesdays. I typically don't tend to make a video on Tuesday, but I'm about to start listing much longer form projects, video essays on Tuesdays and on Saturdays here in the near future, with still these takes here. It's just not going to be as many of them, mostly due to the very slow news cycle. But this individual that we're talking about is Dan Le Batard. So Dan Le Batard decided to, amidst all the chaos at ESPN, I talked about this in the video on Monday, where ESPN is now wanting the NFL and Major League Baseball and the NBA to sort of buy them up or buy them off to a certain extent, kind of like reinvest in their company, which really in a lot of ways is a code word for we would just like you to just buy us outright rather than being under the yoke of Disney, who, by the way, is also going down, which, by the way, I'm going to make a more project on that one right here in the near future. But the thing is this right here. ESPN is dealing with ESPN's situation because they did it to themselves. Now, why am I taking so long to get to Dan Le Batard? Because before 2016, ESPN at one point in time with the debate format on First Take, before that it was Cold Pizza, was actually not a bad product to watch. It was actually a pretty good product. Typically what would happen is that Skip Bayless would come out and he would say something completely absurd, and then Stephen A. Smith, this is before Stephen A. Smith went completely off the cliff with the craziness, he would normally check Skip Bayless. He would normally do that. And then eventually Skip Bayless goes to Fox Sports, where he debates Shannon Sharpe, which, by the way, I've told you guys on multiple occasions before I figured out that sports, for the most part, was now entertainment. I found myself agreeing with Shannon Sharpe 99% of the time, especially when it came to pure sports takes. It's when the whole thing went completely off the rails with wokeness when it actually lost me, and then I realized that for the most part, it's just the people upstairs who are writing the talking points, and they're seeing these people out there to be entertainers. And, of course, as a result of that, I've done a lot less sports takes, because I think people by now realize that sports, for the most part, at least what you're seeing on television as far as debate and narrative pushing, is, in fact, narrative pushing and entertainment. And that model has obviously hurt. Dan Le Batard basically blasts these two in the format that the guys had. I think Dan Le Batard might want to shut his mouth. You see, Dan Le Batard, for the most part, is a complete nobody. He always has been. It didn't take him long to embrace the woke talking points. It didn't take him long to push it. He had the show highly questionable. I don't really pay much attention to Le Batard anymore. I never really paid much attention to him to begin with, because I always thought he was a bit of a loser. Just kind of like that B-roll footage or C-roll footage or D-roll sewage that ESPN would put out there just to give somebody a job to make them feel important. Le Batard, by the way, was probably, I don't really believe his salary numbers are true. He's probably making a lot less than he lets on. Decides to come out and blast Stephen A. Smith. Now, guys, you know me. I have blasted Stephen A. Smith on several occasions. However, that does not mean that I don't respect him as a man. Before the whole woke stuff came out and the whole woke stuff got pushed, I actually had a lot of respect for Stephen A. and I actually found him quite enjoyable to listen to. I actually found him to be quite funny, which, by the way, he still can be from time to time. One of the main reasons why it is that I think Michael Irvin needs to come back. Don't worry, there'll be a separate video on him, because for whatever reason he's missing. We haven't seen him in a while, and it makes you kind of wonder what the hell is going on there. But the thing is this right here. Dan Le Batard does not need to talk. Okay? So the other night, Jason Whitlock. Now, Jason Whitlock is one of these guys that for a long time I didn't really care too much for him, but then he started exposing what the business was about. Whitlock has always been, at least as far as I'm concerned, maybe not the best opinions in the world, but definitely a pretty straight guy as far as what he thinks. And he, of course, he eventually left Fox, got too political, I guess, or they got too political for him. He decided to get out of that. He ended up at Outkick for a little bit, and now he's over at The Blaze. He's got his own show. I still listen to it from time to time, especially when he has somebody like Royce or he has somebody on that actually knows what they're talking about. It's the same rule with Tim Pool. I'm going to check you when you're right. I'm going to praise you when you're right. I'm going to check you when you're wrong. So he decides to expose some details about Dan Le Batard that I think that Dan Le Batard may want to keep his mouth closed about, because quite frankly, Dan Le Batard's not really in a position to give any lectures or to talk to anybody about anything, or he is even in the position
really
to criticize.
close, but we were friendly for a time. Obviously, I worked at ESPN and all of that. But what's driving Le Batard is he's continuing a shtick that he has developed as that he's the rebel, he's the outspoken person speaking truth to the establishment, and everybody else is a fraud. And everybody else has sold out. I haven't. And Le Batard, I don't know if you ever read or used to read The Big Lead, but Le Batard at one point had, when that Ryan Glass-Steagall, who I like and respect, was working over at The Big Lead, Le Batard was very close with Ryan, and Ryan used to write all these things very sympathetic to portray Dan. Oh, Dan's just so worried about his staff and his people and his integrity, but it was all BS. Dan is a sellout. And so he goes after a Stephen A. Smith to pretend like he's not a sellout. No, Stephen A. is the real sellout. We keep it real over here. And I've never sold out. Dan is a sellout. Stephen A. Smith knows Dan's a sellout. Stephen A. Smith, I don't believe it. I don't think he's a sellout. Stephen A. Smith has always been about the money. He said he's about the money. He wants to be as popular and as famous as he can possibly be. That's been his agenda. He's open about that agenda. He's open about his support and shilling for ESPN. Stephen A. is more authentic than Dan Le Batard. People can hear that, and Le Batard and his crew may respond like, oh, Whitlock's bad because he and Dan aren't friends anymore, blah, blah, blah. That ain't it. Not it at all. It's just I had to come to a realization about who Dan Le Batard is. Phony. Keep in mind, Dan Le Batard's parents are Cuban refugees. In the true sense, Cuban refugees. Cubans in Miami that have lived in Cuba at some point. They're the most conservative people in America. They're to the right of Royce. They're to the right of Bryson. I used to know Dan Le Batard's family. Parents, woman he was dating at the time, very close. We vacationed together, couples and all this. Knew them all. This is a conservative group of people. Cubans in Miami have very little respect for Dan Le Batard because they know he's a sellout. This whole left-wing shtick and this whole thing of what you've done to journalism, saying to Stephen A. Smith this, what him and that show have done. Highly questionable. Did more damage to journalism, sports TV journalism, than First Take and any other of the shows wrapped together. Dan Le Batard, Bomani Jones. That was his partner in crime when the show had a tiny modicum of success. Bomani Jones has no journalistic chops, resume, record.
Now, there's more that Whitlock said that we'll get to here in a second. But here's the thing about Le Batard. When ESPN decided to go in their direction of identity politics, which I'm pretty sure we all know by now, it's more than likely that Disney was the one that was pushing it out there, or maybe it was ABC at the time that was pushing it, and ESPN went along with it. Batard, the thing you need to understand about Batard is that he was one of the very first people to actually push the entire woke stuff. I also remember him coming out on the side of Colin Kaepernick when Colin Kaepernick decided to wear a Castro shirt down at the end of a press conference in Miami, and then for whatever reason, he felt that it was a good idea to try to get a tryout with the Miami Dolphins, even though the Miami Dolphins had a couple of previous, how do I say, I wouldn't say they were scandals, but they caught a lot of heat for a couple of different topics. Number one of the things they got in trouble for in the media was taking Jay Cutler over Colin Kaepernick. Okay. Well, Dan Le Batard is Cuban, and he is from Miami. He's got very, very conservative parents. I mean, you think that Cubans aren't right-wing. I hate to tell you this, but Cubans are very, very conservative. Probably all those years, all those stories of Castro that turned them away from communism. Just figure I would go ahead and throw that out there. Anything that even smells of communism, they're going to run away from because obviously Cubans ain't exactly about that life. They've already lived it once before. Quite frankly, they don't want to live it again. So when he comes out and actually he says that the city of Miami and he says that the Miami Dolphins organization is wrong for not taking in Kaepernick and signing Jay Cutler, a guy who had played for Adam Gase in a previous team, that right there being the Chicago Bears when Gase was the offensive coordinator, and Jay Cutler had his best statistical season that season in 2015 under Adam Gase. It seemed to me like a pretty easy match for them to sign Jay Cutler. People also forget that the city of Miami, they don't play when it comes to the whole communism thing, even if it's a comment that may even be a joke. Do you guys remember a manager, a baseball manager, this guy right here by the name of Ozzie Guillen? I remember him very, very well because when I was a kid, I remember being a part of the 1993 White Sox team as the shortstop. Very vocal player, always had a smile on his face. Then he played for my team, the Atlanta Braves, 1999 and I think 2000 season. He may have been there midway through 1998 as well. Ozzie was always a player that had a smile on his face. He was always happy, but then he got the job of managing. I think he managed the White Sox. He was there for a little bit. He was eventually let go or they parted ways, something like that happened. A lot of controversy. Many people think he quit. Some people think he actually got fired. But then, out of the middle of nowhere, he decides to go down to Miami after taking over the job from the then current Braves manager, Freddie Gonzalez, who, by the way, was Cuban. And he decided to make a comment about Castro.
I was taking Spanish, and the thing I say, I cannot believe somebody hurt so many people over the years is still alive. And I say a couple of things I cannot say right now to the guy when exactly what I was thinking or what I was saying. My situation, but I will willing to do everything in my power, or the Marlins power, to help and believe I will help this community like I always do. I don't think surprise came this big because I heard a lot of people feeling, a lot of victims feelings. I did hear a lot of people. That's the first time. I only apologize in my comments twice. Twice. That's why when I'm here, I mean it. I not do this for fake or for my job or for make me look good or better. I'm here because I meant it. And we need this, especially myself. I make a lot of comments. I never apologize because I thought it was the proper thing, but now I have to do it because I think I do the wrong thing. And that's what I'm here for. I do the wrong thing. I have to clear up, and I let them know, Cuban community, how I'm truly behind them and truly honest with them. It's not what I do right now. It's what I'm going to do in the future. Continue to support the Marlins. Continue to support the players. Continue to support this great thing happening right now. The Venezuelan players, they don't have anything to do with them. Vote what they're supposed to vote. This is the democratic, like they went that, like he called.
The day of those comments, and Ozzie tried to act like what he was saying was he went for different directions, like he was trolling, or maybe he went to several directions, several different defenses that he had for that comment, but yet none of them actually stuck. Maybe it's because in the state of Florida, especially in South Florida, they're not exactly down with the commie thing, all right? They never have been down with it, as I said before. And, Dan Le Batard's parents, they know this. They raised him. They obviously had the stories of communism. I mean, why else do you think Cuban fighter Jorge Masvidal was such a big Trump voter? Why do you think that's the case? I mean, dude, you just don't praise Castro, and even if it was a joke, you just don't do that down in Miami, Florida. I mean, it's the last place in the world you would want to do that. But then again, though, I do know some very, very stupid people who still praise him for whatever reason. I have no idea why that's the case. I mean, Castro was obviously a monster, as well as Che Guevara and all the other commies and the Nazis, which, by the way, they're all the same. It's just different forms. It's all based off Marxism. Just go ahead and just throw that out there. Now, why in the world would I bring this up in the conversation of Dan Le Batard? Well, Dan Le Batard, of course, he does have parents who obviously have the stories. And, of course, people in the city of Miami probably feel that Dan Le Batard, when it comes to issues like, I don't know, like people getting fired or people getting an opportunity to maybe expand their horizons as far as jobs is concerned, like Stephen A. and Skip Bayless did. They made that format look good for a few years there. It seems to me that people just don't want to hear him talk. I mean, you guys do remember the whole Michelle Tafoya incident.
You're in the middle, and I'm looked at as far left, and you're looked at as far right, when all I look at is, man, too much like a threat for my liking.
A cry for equality?
Yes.
What have I said that makes you feel that way?
No, I'm not right now. I'm saying things that I have read and what I believe about, perhaps things I assume about your viewpoint, but I can't check all the boxes with you because, again, I don't know how you feel. You have said you're pro-life. That does not, I'm pro-choice.
No.
Pro-choice,
I said
excuse me.
pro-choice.
Yes,
Let's be careful here.
Yeah, pro-choice. That does not fit with the checking of the boxes.
If I may, you led with your a pro-choice libertarian and you're a fiscal conservative, and then you said, I don't want to believe that one group is oppressed and another party is oppressors, and that is eschewing just, hey, I'm a fiscal conservative. Sociologically speaking, I am a conservative, and I believe in law and order. These are all platform issues and slogans of a party that is not just fiscally conservative.
Law and order is a platform of a party that is not just fiscally conservative. What does that mean?
Well, I imagine what you're getting to in Law and Order was like the hot button issue of the peaceful protest, and something that Jack Del Rio kind of stepped in. So it's typically people that are conservative.
This is problematic. You're talking about a hot button issue that I am not even discussing. You're making an assumption about something I said. Law and order.
Michelle, I'm not. No, look,
you are. You just said.
I'm independent. But when you say that you don't want to believe,
what you are, but you just assigned a value to something I said that was so benign, and you've assigned the wrong value to it.
Okay, all right. I'll let you explain the law and order. Why don't?
Yeah, rather than just assume that I'm talking about something like Jack Del Rio. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Okay, eliminate the Jack Del Rio part if you want to seize on that. Let's talk about the oppressors and.
I was just interrupted, just kept on trying to get her to, just try to antagonize the hell out of her. Fact of the matter is that nobody likes Dan Le Batard and nobody gives a flying crap what the hell this guy thinks. Oh, you're probably thinking, why are you ranting about Dan Le Batard? Well, like I said before, Dan Le Batard may want to keep his mouth shut when it comes to issues like this. You see, like I said, before ESPN went totally woke, before ESPN started playing identity politics, ESPN, at least the debate format, was actually pretty good. As a matter of fact, I'm all about debate, even though I think debate is dead, and I think people should stop doing debates and maybe go to discussions and maybe do, fact-finding missions together. You get a friend of yours and you have an argument about something, and the next thing you know, you two sit down and you actually research it together. Fact of the matter is that we don't have that anymore. It's part of the reason why debate is dead. Even in sports debate, because I can sit down and listen to, Skip and Shannon go at one another, and like I said before, I can sit here and tell you which one's full of crap and which one's not with my good old-fashioned smartphone, just looking up by stats, even though I personally am a guy who prefers to watch the film and watch the game and let that right there better decide for me what the hell really happened rather than the actual stat sheet, because stat sheet is just a way of trying to make an argument without using any form of logic, because a lot of people out there love to use stats as an argument, but yet they didn't even watch the game. Never mind that. Fact of the matter is that Dan Le Batard on several occasions has proven himself to be, well, I'll let Jason finish.
Journalism, sports TV journalism, than First Take and any other of the shows wrapped together. Dan Le Batard, Bomani Jones, that was his partner in crime when the show had a tiny modicum of success. Bomani Jones has no journalistic chops, resume, record, nothing. No, and that's not me being bitter. The facts speak for themselves. Bomani Jones ain't never covered no team. He's never been a journalist. He wrote a handful of articles, and Bill Simmons used to call him out how lazy he was and how the guy keeps falling upwards. I can remember back when I was on Team Bomani Jones, Bill Simmons used to be like, what are you talking about? This guy's a clown. He has no work ethic, no follow through. He's accomplished nothing, and we keep giving him opportunities. At that time, I was defending Bomani. Bill Simmons was actually right. That's who Dan Le Batard, heard that from Bomani's own mouth. But they did a show. They'd bring on rappers and let the whole little clown show thing go. Katie Nolan, Sarah Spain, all of these people with no journalism record. Katie Nolan was a bartender who was flirting with executives to get jobs. That's who Dan was putting on his show 2-3 times a week. And you want to blame Stephen A. Smith for ruining journalism and sports television? You done took a little flirt out of a bar and put her on TV and pretending like she has something to say important about the sports world? And y'all wonder why I come across like a misogynist, which I'm not.
He's right. ESPN got killed by unqualified idiots. Jamel Hill, Katie Nolan, and the biggest one that we oftentimes forget about, Dan Le Batard. Somebody's going to say, isn't Jason Whitlock a really good friend with Dan Le Batard? Well, see, here's the thing about being friends with somebody. After a while, a friend begins to show you who they are. They typically tend to do this by taking on certain jobs, taking certain types of money, doing whatever to get them money. They basically become a whore. That's pretty much what they do. And Le Batard is one of the few guys, and I would think he's probably the one guy that ESPN probably should have considered first, looking back on it now in layoffs. They should have kicked him off a long time ago. Same thing with Bomani Jones. I mean, go back to what Whitlock was saying. He's not lying. Katie Nolan, she basically was a bartender, a bar girl who used to do little skits. She, for the most part, was a face. She was very attractive. I'm not going to lie to you, but of course, once again, she got paid to carry the woke line. Jamel Hill, for the most part, she got by just pandering the woke line. Just about everybody who worked at that network who should have gotten fired or laid off, they simply carried the woke line for that company for a very long time. And you guys can now see that these people who probably don't even believe in the crap that they spew are now viewed as sellouts, and that right there eventually is going to lead to an extremely lonely life, especially for Le Batard. Well, gee, Jason, you've been friends with this guy for a very long time. I'm a little bit surprised. You know what? I think Jason has actually came out on multiple occasions and said that Dan was exactly this type of guy. Look, here's the deal. ESPN, okay, when they were really the worldwide leader in sports, I don't think they really and truly are now. They can claim that they are now, but they really aren't. Once they got away from highlights and actual sports analysis, they started bringing in shows like, say, Cold Pizza, which, by the way, would eventually become First Take. I think Colin Cowherd was over at ESPN at one time. Very interesting exchange he had one time where I think he tried to punk Brock Lesnar, but he ended up getting punked in the process. I don't really like Cowherd either. He's a sniveling turd. The thing is this right here. ESPN did the whole debate format probably initially to fill time in the morning, so that way people could get a different perspective rather than looking at highlights, because ESPN used to show highlights on SportsCenter. That was like, for an entire hour, they would show highlights of what happened the previous night. Normally from 7 a.m. to about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That's actually what they did if they didn't have anything to showcase. And at one point in time, ESPN did showcase more baseball games, hockey, basketball games. The format itself was completely changed. However, ESPN could have survived if they had gone with the debate format to go along with the actual daytime ball games and stuff. The reason why Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless were put out there was to help boost the company's overall ratings, especially during the day. And for the most part, it worked. But Dan Le Batard's show, highly questionable, never did well at all. It really and truly didn't. It made people almost wonder why in the world it was that Dan Le Batard was even given an opportunity to even be on the network. Nobody listens to his radio show. Now, we haven't even gotten to the part about him being a sellout and not being a high-quality human being. It's pretty obvious that this man has devolved over the years. We're just talking about his accolades right now. There's not very many of them to, own. I mean, it seems to me like every day that he decided to push the woke line, it was obviously designed to simply keep his job, keep himself right where he was at. It just seems to me like Le Batard is not exactly somebody who should be throwing criticisms at anybody at this point in time. But then again, though, what do I know? I'm just a guy here on Utah. Wait, that's right. the YouTube sports guys are starting to get a lot more views than those who work at ESPN. Just figure out. Let me ask you guys a serious question. This right is where I'm going to end the video at. Seeing how ESPN is wanting people to pay money to invest in their company to basically buy them out, don't you think maybe it's possible that Dan Le Batard, a man who knows absolutely nothing about sports, who can very, very easily be bought off by the very, very small sniff of an extremely small amount of dollars, somebody who would basically say whatever the hell you want, do you want? Is it possible that maybe he's no longer needed? He's no longer useful? Is it possible maybe because of his reputation of being somebody who had no respect for other people? Is it possible that because of his show Highly Questionable, which quite frankly was highly gag worthy, is it possible that this guy right here may find himself gone in the next round of layoffs that quite frankly will more than likely be happening because obviously ESPN is hurting for money? I mean, really, what good is Dan Le Batard? I mean, at least Stephen A. Smith is exactly what Jason Whitlock said. At least he's somewhat authentic. Well, I do believe he does obviously carry the woke talking points. Michael Irvin is at least authentic. They have authentic personalities, and while Skip Bayless is definitely intentionally designed to antagonize people, I do believe that he is authentically good, at least at that part there. Fact of the matter is that ESPN is no longer about journalism, and it's part of the reason why, actually the biggest reason why, that company has fallen apart, and that company is about to die. By the way, I got a video essay going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks on the death of ESPN and exactly why it was that it died. Also, the same thing is going to be happening with Disney. I just figured I'd go ahead and throw this one out here for a good Wednesday afternoon to get you guys over on Hump Day and switch things up to sports, because obviously we have another turd out there in the water who can't keep his mouth shut without looking in the frickin' mirror. Guys, John Claymore here. If you guys like this content, please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section. I'll see you guys later.